Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for our next Speakers Collective live session with one of our collective members. I'm Chandy, I help with the social media. John's also online and he's going to be commenting in the information section of this video. So if you need any information on signposting, on support for your mental health, that's where you can find it. Today I'm joined by Melanie. I'm not going to introduce her just yet, I'm going to give her the opportunity to do that. So Melanie, do you want to talk a bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, certainly. So as you can see just from my name, it says Inclusivfluencer, which is a bit of a mouthful. So just first off, I'm going to start by being really inclusive and describing myself for those people that are visually impaired or have access needs. I have pink hair, I'm a white female with blue eyes, and I'm wearing a bright pink jumper, and I'm sitting down talking to lovely Chandy. So yes, I am. My background and why I joined the Speakers Collective. So my background really spans across a lot professionally, which is from adult social care, drug and alcohol services. I supported people through treatment programs and beyond, managed something called the Progress to Work project for the whole of County of Bedfordshire, and lots of different other things that my brain won't tell me, because I do have neurodivergence and I have problems with my mental illness sometimes that interrupt my train of thought. And that's happening right now. So that's a good thing to talk about. And then in terms of personally, I live with mental illness, multiple disabilities, and I also am neurodivergent. And I founded an organisation, a social enterprise called Rural Mental Health Matters back in 2019, because we moved to Dorset and we found that although Dorset has a 46% rural population, there isn't many services for people in rural areas. There's a massive inequality. So that was founded to support people in rural areas. And then I also have Melanie Costas Consulting, which is my consultancy service that helps people to be more inclusive, more proactive with their support for mental and physical health in the workplace. And that ties into the Speakers Collective, because that is a lot about people with lived experience. The Speakers Collective has a wealth of speakers from all different backgrounds, and I linked with John on Twitter, I think, which is now called X. I can't bring myself to call it X. And yeah, I thought, oh, Speakers Collective, and I looked, and then we had a conversation, and then I joined, and I found the community there absolutely fantastic and really supported. So yeah, I really feel like it's a really safe, supportive space, which is why I feel more comfortable talking to people about my lived experience. I actually believe that if more services had lived experience leading them from the planning to the delivery stages, then services and support would be much better for people.
As John said in the comments, please do leave any comments or feedback or anything in the chat function if you are watching this live. And even if you're watching this back on like demand, please do engage and share this with other people in your network. You were just talking there, Melanie, you spoke about your kind of professional background, but also how your lived experiences fed into that. Why is it important for you that we are moving, or that we should move towards a society where we are more open to discuss mental health problems?
Well, because in a lot of places, including this country, in the UK, there is still such a stigma and misunderstanding around mental illness and physical illness and disabilities, to be quite honest. There's been lots of statistics thrown around, but one of the most comprehensive was a report that Forbes did on why people with disabilities, and that includes mental and physical health and neurodivergence, don't disclose to their employees in the workplace. And around 4% of disabled people feel comfortable disclosing. Now, those are the reasons. The reasons they don't do that is because of fear, stigma, shame, and when people don't talk about these things, they then think it's just them that feels like that. So they don't tend to reach out and ask for help until it's kind of almost approaching a crisis. And we know that, unfortunately, suicide rates have gone up and are going up. And if people felt that they could come forward and talk more openly and not being judged, because there's a fear of being judged there, or being a burden if you tell somebody all about your problems, in inverted commas, then people would get help much sooner and they'd be supported much sooner, and they wouldn't feel this sort of overwhelm when it comes to their mental and physical illnesses and disabilities. Now, I just mentioned I had mental illnesses. I live with PTSD and anxiety. PTSD was a diagnosis that I had 6 months post my breast cancer diagnosis. I just had a complete mental breakdown. It just literally hit me sideways. And yet, there is no mandatory support for people that are going through cancer for their mental health. I find that astonishing, because if we think about 1 in 2 people, according to Cancer Research UK, will get cancer at some point in their lives, how then do they not get support? Because, how can it not affect you mentally? Clearly, it affects me. So, yeah, I think that by sharing our stories and being more open, if we can, because I understand for some people it's difficult, then that helps people feel that they're less alone and it's not just them. And what I've seen is a kind of ripple effect. Whenever I've shared my stories on LinkedIn or on Twitter or on TikTok or any of those platforms, I've seen people in the comments come forward and thank me and say that they don't feel alone, and I feel like that, and I didn't realise. I genuinely follow it up with, I don't just leave people with like a link to say the Hub of Hope, which is on Rural Mental Health Matters website. And the Hub of Hope is, for people that don't know, is an excellent resource that people can search by postcode and topic of where to get support and help and advice. It's run by Chasing the Stigma. But yeah, I feel that if we can talk about things more, then there's more understanding. We're raising awareness for a start. There's more understanding, and it breaks down that stigma, which then kind of takes away that onus that is all on us to kind of fix ourselves, when that is not the case. If you're in a place where you're not feeling emotionally stable or mentally stable, to say to somebody, that the term man up or sort yourself out is really unhelpful. In fact, it can have a really detrimental effect on people. So whenever I see people sharing their stories or I share my story, it's really positive to me. I don't see it as, be quiet, don't say anything. It's World Menopause Day on Friday, and I've done a video about it, and in the video I've actually whispering the word menopause, because we still get that. We still get people don't talk about it, as if it's something to be ashamed of. Yeah.
And this month is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So it's amazing to have you today talking about your lived experience. Just before we went live, you spoke about some of the inequalities and the support that's been offered to you post-diagnosis and treatment, and the treatment you're still waiting for. How are you now? How are things? What are you looking towards in the future in terms of making sure that you're keeping yourself well?
Okay, thanks for asking that. Yeah, I mean, last week, the 9th of October was my 4-year anniversary since I had my mastectomy. It's a trigger for me every time I have my annual mammogram, to the point where last year I couldn't even go up the stairs in the building. I was glued to the spot because I had a panic attack. And I think a lot of professionals in the world of oncology and cancer think that it's all about the treatment, and once you've had your treatment and the cancer's removed, then you're all right. But I often say, actually, after that, after a cancer diagnosis and your treatment, surviving cancer is just the beginning. And support needs to be ongoing, and it's not proactive. As I said, it's not mandatory that you're asked, how's your mental health when you're going through cancer treatment. Some places are better than others, but it's not across the board. It's not equitable across the board. For me, I'm struggling because I was told initially that I'm going to only wait up to 18 months. Nobody waits longer than 18 months, I was told, for reconstruction. So just to explain to people, my mastectomy, when my breast cancer was when I was diagnosed, it was a threat to my life. The actual oncologist's words were, your breast is riddled with cancer. Can you believe that? Those were his words. And my only options were either not be here anymore or have a mastectomy. I had to have the whole breast removed. Now, that's good because that cancer is gone and I'm now 4 years clear. But my reconstruction, which is actually part of my treatment, hasn't happened yet. And I've got no date. So I'm kind of left in limbo. I'm constantly looking at the scar, at half my chest missing, and it sort of keeps me in that limbo of being back there. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no support for that whatsoever. In fact, some of the attitudes are, you're lucky, and you'll get it when you get it. You're lucky to be alive. And yes, I get that, I'm lucky to be alive, but at the same time, it's affected my mental health and it's affected me emotionally and sometimes physically because of my sleep. Now, I did seek help, and I would encourage anybody out there that is going through cancer treatment, either at the start of their journey or the end or wherever they are on that journey, to reach out and get help. There is help available. Macmillan, Cancer Support UK, Percy Health, that I'm on the client advisory board with. They offer access to counselling and all sorts of clinical support. Because the sooner you get those numbers for support and help, the better that you will feel, because you can then know who to reach out to. But the issues are that lots of people don't know that these organisations exist. So therefore they're kind of suffering in silence. I don't like the word suffer, but I can't think of another word. But yeah, it's very difficult because obviously working in my background in mental health, social services, drug and alcohol services, and I've worked in the NHS as well, I kind of know where to go to look for help. But a lot of people don't. Just trying to navigate the system is difficult enough, especially when you've been hit by something so scary as cancer. It's a scary word in itself. Yeah, I'm happy to say that for my PTSD, although it was a 2-year waiting list, I completed EMDR. John, you're going to have to put what EMDR is because my brain won't tell me. It's rapid eye something therapy for PTSD. And I completed that at the end of last year. Before that, I was having hallucinations, panic attacks, nightmares, and my psychiatrist has actually told me that when I was diagnosed with PTSD, I actually got complex PTSD because there was other traumas, and that trauma that set off the PTSD was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you. And I've put a comment for what EMDR is, and you can see it on the screen now. For anyone that's been affected by what we've been talking about today, obviously there is a hub of hope where you can search for support in your area. You can also call the Samaritans on 116-123, or you can email them at joe@samaritans.org. I'll put that in the chat in a second. While I do that, Melanie, how do you look after your mental health? What are you doing to kind of, because it sounds like there's a lot going on for you both mentally and the physical health side of things. How do you look after yourself? What are the things that you enjoy doing that help you have that relaxation?
Well, I actually think around the middle of 2023, although there was a blip because my partner has cancer, and last year he was in a coma twice, but we're not going to talk about that because we'll be here an hour. He's all right at the moment. But since post that, so late last year, I actually really pay attention to self-care. And although people band that around like, well-being, sort of, word that people don't take seriously, it's not a luxury, it's actually an essential. I book time out in my diary for me. So even if I don't do anything, I know that I've got that break there in my diary. Nobody can book any appointments with me, and I do that every single week. Sometimes I veg out watching TV. There's recently something called Joan on ITV. I'm not plugging ITV, but I watched it, binge watch it. Sometimes I do that to distract my mind. Sometimes I read a book. Sometimes I get really creative. Being neurodivergent is quite difficult for me because I go from somewhere from overwhelmed to hyper-focus and not really happy in between. But I really I suppose what I'm trying to say is I pay attention to and try and tune in more to stuff. So instead of pushing through with pain, because I live with chronic pain, I'll stop. I'll ask for help more. Something that I never, and you'll be surprised just to tell people when you ask for help. So many people want to help you. Please don't be afraid to ask for help, and that's physically or mentally for whatever you're going through. People want to help. They're not mind readers. They don't know that you're standing there in pain in the supermarket and you can't move. You could just ask them for help and they will help you 9 times out of 10. I don't think I've ever had anybody say anything detrimental to me or be rude to me. The kindness there is just unbelievable. But just really listening to my body more and planning ahead, because burnout, I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt in work, can happen and it can creep up on you and come from nowhere, and it takes a long time to get over. I was really seriously ill in hospital with burnout and it took me about 2 years to get over. And yeah, I think if we can just sort of say to ourselves, no, it's okay to take Friday afternoon off, or it's okay to do nothing on Saturday and not even get dressed if I don't want to. Yeah, we don't taking that pressure off ourselves, not putting more pressure on ourselves, and paying more attention to self-care. And I have a journal. I'm not been very good of late using it, but it's there. And journaling also helps because I'm like getting my thoughts out onto paper that I can then read back later. It's sort of a self-therapy, self-help thing. I find it really therapeutic. But yeah, I think there's lots of resources online that you can also do to find strategies that work for you, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. So you could possibly go on to even just Google self-care techniques, and it will bring up, I mean, AI is great in many factors because it will bring up a whole list, and you can have a look into those and go, oh, I hadn't thought of doing that. I think I'll do that. I like to get outside, but with the British weather, that's a little bit temperamental. And I like to go on holiday, and I'm going on holiday on Saturday, which we were talking about before, and I can't wait. A week in the sun, just relaxing and, yeah, switching off. Switching off is a good tip, which is easier said than done, isn't it, Chandy?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Melanie. I think that's some really helpful advice, and thank you for being so open and honest with me about your experiences. John's put some information about how you can book Melanie to speak at your event in the chat, and that's on the screen now. And that will take you through to the Speakers Collective website. There's also information on support that's available in the chat function as well. So please, if you are struggling or you've been affected by anything we've discussed today, please do reach out for that support. And once again, thank you, Melanie, and have a lovely weekend and a holiday.
Thank you very much. I just want to end by saying the Samaritans are there to listen to anything you're going through. And you've already mentioned them, 116, 123. People tend to think that you just bring the Samaritans in a crisis. No, they're there to listen whatever you're going through, and they're fantastic. And thank you to the Speakers Collective for having me, because I really am enjoying the community and the support that I'm getting there. And thanks, Chandy. Have a lovely rest of your day.
And you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.